Hey everybody, Amanda Russo here with Keller Williams Collective, and this is Move Forward with Amanda. And I am so happy today to have my special guest, Ginger Jones with Diversified Life Care Partners and Michelle Butler with Tupper Butler Law. Today, we are going to bust some myths and talk about some things about aging and planning and what to do and what not to do. So welcome, ladies. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
What I want to do first is tell everybody, obviously who you are and how you got to where you are in life right now and why you are so passionate about serving this population that we work with.
Me to go first? So I'm Ginger Jones. I'm the founder and owner of Diversified Life Care Partners. We have been in business since 2011. We were originally founded Diversified Nurse Consultants, so some people are more familiar with that name. We rebranded, though, because being a partner for life is really more about what we do with our senior clients and their families. I got into this after, I've been a nurse for 33 years, a registered nurse, and after about 20, I got into this business because I really wanted to make a difference. I had some journeys on my personal life. I had a grandmother who had Alzheimer's for 12 years. And I have a son that is quadriplegic since age 14. And I also went through a period with my daughter who had a traumatic brain injury. And so I got a lot of time to experience support and healthcare, not only from the nursing side, but from the consumer side. And I was really saddened and frustrated with all the gaps and myths and misinformation. And so we started this company and we provide aging life care services as well as other support services like fiduciary support, power of attorney, and that sort of stuff.
Well, I am Michelle Tupper Butler of Tupper Butler Law. I started Tupper Butler Law in 2019. I've been an attorney for over 20 years. I'm from Louisville, but spent most of my adult life in Washington, D.C. and New York, where I practiced law in D.C. after graduating from Georgetown Law School, never thinking that I would be back here in Louisville, but I am, and I'm glad that I am. I was a litigator for most of my career, and my father, who's the greatest person I knew and raised me after my mom died when I was 9 years old, he retired at the age of 72, and a couple months after his retirement, he tripped in his home where he lived alone and landed on his neck. We did not find him for 16 hours, and he became a quadriplegic from that moment on. In the ICU, everyone's looking at the lawyer in the room about what to do, but I could tell you about the False Claims Act. I couldn't tell you what to do for someone who suddenly couldn't move. And we got very lucky because he woke up, and we were able to then do the things that we wish we had done prior to the crisis. And so along the way, I met so many families and experienced so many highs and lows that I decided I wanted to direct my practice to this population to let people know that there is a new normal that can be found after a crisis. There is a way to plan ahead because none of us is yet immortal and aging will happen. And not to feel what I felt in that hospital when my dad fell without any idea of what to do.
Yeah, I can imagine going through that. And, we see it all the time, unfortunately, in the business that we do, but having it be your own parent and kind of having to step away from that attorney role and then be daughter and try to figure this out.
Well, and so much of what we do is and my goal in this practice and how we're different is that I just want family members to be able to be family members. Mm-hmm. So we work with Ginger on a number of cases so that families, not just the person in need of care can have a high quality of life, but we want the family to also have a high quality of life. And that means having proper legal documents in place, having proper care plans in place, and knowing what's out there that many of us just don't know until it's too late.
Yeah. And what we're going to talk about today is some of those misconceptions of, what will pay for care or how to best handle a certain situation. And you guys have some things in mind that I think are great topics that people really need to hear about and understand how it really works.
I think, just from what we've shared, I think an important point for me is that as a caregiver or somebody trying to navigate this, you may be a very experienced professional. I mean, I was a nurse, and when I went through this with my family, I was so stressed that I was a successful day for me was just getting through the day, caring for my loved one. You don't necessarily have the capacity to learn and think about all the things and dynamics. And I know that Michelle went through the same thing. She's a very intelligent attorney, but she needed support and guidance. And actually, that was when we first crossed paths.
I found Diversified Nurse Consulting. So we made a decision. When my father woke up, we were, again, very lucky that we were able to talk to him and put a plan together. And we also were lucky in that I have one sibling, my brother and I, we agreed throughout the course of all of this. And if we hadn't, then we would have ended up in court where the court would have had to appoint one of us to make these decisions. And so that's why having a legal plan in place is extremely, extremely important. But my father finished rehab at Fraser to try and regain some mobility. And we decided we sold our house. I had a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old and was practicing at a big law firm downtown. We sold my dad's house because he couldn't ever go back there. And we bought a house together, thinking that this is a way to keep him from a facility and be able to give him, well, I didn't know what I didn't know. So I found Diversified to go through my house and help me prepare for him to come home in a power wheelchair. I had no idea the things that they were able to point out to me so that I could make that experience much less stressful.
People have a lot of misunderstandings as how are they going to pay for care in the home? How is all that managed once something happens and you're in a situation that you need to start taking action? That's when people are like, okay, well, isn't my insurance going to pay for that? Isn't Medicare going to pay for that? And the answer is no, they are not.
We always get the deer in headlights look when we say that, when they ask, well, isn't Medicare going to pay for assisted living or long-term care?
No.
And no, unfortunately, it's not.
Yeah. And both Michelle and I see a lot of people make wrong turns or rash decisions when they get in this point because you're getting a lot of feedback. You're getting a lot of feedback from different people. You've got a discharge planner at the hospital giving you some information, and you might have a home health person coming in, and you might have talked with an attorney, or, I've got to quit waving my hands because I'm going to keep hitting this microphone. So it's hard to sort through that, and that can make it even more confusing. But you really want, if in a perfect world, people would have an idea of understanding what their benefits paid for and what they have access to.
So much of what we learn, we look to the people providing care to our loved ones. And that makes sense. That's what I did. That is the normal source of information. Unfortunately, and I'm not knocking facilities because we live in the system that we live in, and this is a for-profit health industry. But there isn't an incentive for any of the facilities or hospitals to help you save money. Not only is the legal landscape super complicated and they don't want to get it wrong, but also your private pay dollars provide more income to the facility. And so it makes sense that that's simply what they check for. And the number of people that come into my office thinking they're going to lose the home, it's almost a universal myth that I can immediately say, no, you will not lose the home. No one is going to take your home. The biggest danger is selling the home or adding someone to your deed.
Yes.
That causes more problems than solutions. And people so often just want to do the right thing and they want to pay whatever is needed for care, not realizing that even though Medicare might not cover beyond a certain point, Medicaid, which is a completely different program, is there, and that long-term care Medicaid is very different from what we normally think of when we think Medicaid. The vast majority of anyone residing in a long-term care facility on the skilled nursing level is receiving Medicaid. You cannot tell the difference between who is receiving Medicaid and who is privately paying $12,000, $13,000, $15,000 a month for the exact same care. So the best time to reach out and formulate some kind of plan, both financially and to receive the best care available at home or otherwise, is before there is a crisis.
And I don't think people realize you threw out some numbers, but I'd like to kind of pause there for a second. How much long-term care costs, and even the different levels of care. They think, well, mom's going to need to go to a facility. What does that mean? Well, in our area, we've got a lot of options. There are independent living senior communities in our area that offer some optional services, but there's no built-in support. We have assisted living social models that offer a certain level of support. Generally, they will provide meals. They don't have a nurse on site, but you can get some aid services that you pay for. Those start, the basic apartments for that start around $4,000 a month and go up depending on how much service you need. You step up to a little bit more support and assisted living, basic health or assisted living memory care in Kentucky, and you're talking $7,000 to $9,000 a month sometimes. And then once people aren't able to stay in those locations, those options become unavailable when somebody gets so. Those options aren't available to you once you reach a certain level of functional need and support. They are made for people that can be mobile with not a lot of assistance. They can either propel their wheelchair or their walker. They can get up with assistance of one person. When you have somebody that's had a stroke or is quadriplegic, that requires skilled level of nursing care. And those are the facilities that we traditionally think of as nursing home facilities or long-term care centers. And those start at around $11,000 a month now and go up to $15,000 to $16,000 a month. And is a very small percentage of the population that can afford that, but for the most
I have not met any yet.
Everyone will go broke if you have not done some planning.
That's right. And along with that, I frequently have people say, well, I will never be able to qualify for Medicaid because the financial test has an income limit or an asset limit. And the income limit they refer to it as an income cap. It is not a cap. I can help any person as long as the income that comes each month to a person in need of skilled nursing care is less than the cost of that care. Medicaid is available. It's knowing how to ask for it correctly and not make mistakes because you cannot unring the bell. Mm-hmm. So I've had people who have paid money that would not have been required to be paid for their care, and we can't get that back. I've had people make changes to their deed or give money away that cost them more in time than could have been saved with a Medicaid that we cannot undo.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times, especially with selling the house too, like sometimes I always tell families you can't sell it for less than fair market value because that's considered a gift, or adding the kid to the deed. They're doing that to avoid probate, hopefully, which creates a large taxable gain to their child.
And also as a gift.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So that becomes a penalty as well.
Yeah, and I've had someone, buy a grandchild a car, or there's things like that. And things like that, we need to speak with attorneys before we make these decisions to make sure that it's not going to hurt us later on down the road. And we're trying to do things, as best we can, or do things that are going to, we hope, help our family or bless our family. But at the end, we may be actually hurting ourselves more than we realize that we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Often people are trying to do the right thing, and they do solve one problem, with a move that they make, but they introduce another that they aren't aware of.
Mhm.
And so one of the things that we do at Tupper Butler Law is help describe the landscape of options. Because so much of it, I say all the time, this is your own comfort level with risk. No one can predict exactly what will happen tomorrow. But I also have people who come in and say, well, I'm never going to a nursing home.
Mhm.
So I have two myths to bust about that. First of all, not all nursing homes are bad. Some nursing homes are quite lovely.
Well, and I think nowadays I talk to a lot of families about assisted living, and when you say that to a parent or a grandparent, that's what they think. They
Right.
think nursing home because they didn't have these buildings for
Mhm.
that generation.
And often they're in the same building, and people don't
Yes.
understand that either.
They don't
That you can
understand.
be in assisted living that also has a skilled nursing unit in the same structure.
Mhm. So people understanding what is available, just in the past 20 years has changed so dramatically
Mhm.
from when they were doing these things with their parents. So I love that you brought that up because that is a fear
Oh,
that people hold on to.
there's a quality of life improvement in so many of my clients who have just been able to take the time to go and visit places to see that instead of, I deal a lot with the sandwich generation. So I have adult kids who are facing parenting their parents.
Mhm.
So you ask me how I know how to deal with all of that. But there is a quality of life that can be had at certain facilities. Not all facilities. There are some facilities I would not ever encourage. There are facilities, though. I toured 8 facilities before I had my dad in one for the time between his discharge from the hospital and rehab to when we were able to buy a house that would work with our family. And it was, it provided a level of care and companionship and meals. And there are different kinds of places with different vibes. And I wish so often that people would just go check some places out to see for themselves.
And I'll say too, I think that it is a bit of a myth, and I agree. There's some lovely places, and we've got clients that are in assisted livings and facilities that it's really improved their quality of life. But we have to also keep in mind that 90% of people don't want to leave their homes. And so what Diversified Life Care Partners does, we are aging life care managers. We conduct a holistic assessment. We get to know everything about an individual, their functional needs, their medical needs, their financial needs, if they've done legal planning, what what brings them joy, and what will keep them most independent. And our goal is to help them live their best, most independent life. But what we do is, from a completely unbiased standpoint, we can lay out all the options for them. And we partner with so many wonderful elder law attorneys and work closely with financial planners too, to make sure that if there's recommendations or a plan, and it might be, some people can benefit from adding some in-home support services at a step before they need to go to assisted living, and they may range from a couple $100s to a couple $1,000s a month of expense. There may be benefits that would pay for that, home and community-based waiver services, that type of thing. But I think it's really important for people to understand all their options. And one thing that I hate is when people don't, and they just say, well, gosh, you need more support, then the next step is absolutely, let's move you to an assisted living. And sometimes that's not the next step. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's wonderful, but sometimes there's a bridge. I can tell you a little bit of a story. We have a gentleman that was living alone, a retired professor, very intelligent man in Lexington. We serve Southern Indiana, all of Louisville, and Lexington, Kentucky. And he had lost a lot of social contact over the course of COVID and kind of started becoming a shut-in. He had been befriended by a young woman who he believed cared and supported him and her friend, who wasn't Oh, her brother. He thought it was her brother. It was her boyfriend. And they, over the course of a year and a half and multiple trips to the bank, exploited him out of about $100,000. And so, honestly, even when APS came to see him, he said, I want to give her my money. And so they kind of stopped right there. But we got involved and we were able to not just remove him from his home. His home was kind of a hoarding situation, but we were able to take a step-by-step approach and say, okay, let's look at the most immediate dangers right now. You're at risk for being exploited, and let's put some safety measures around that. You have safety risk in your homes. Let's modify some of that. He wasn't having his hygiene taken care of. And the other thing is important to understand is everybody has free will. So even though he had some cognitive challenges, he still has rights. Right. And so we needed to
bad choices.
That is exactly
we needed
right.
to respect his rights and gain his trust. And 7 months later, I'm really happy to say that we've resolved the hoarding situation in the home. We are giving him support. He's doing socially engaging activities, living in his home, having he didn't need a lot of care support, but this care support that he needs. We were able to get his legal issues taken care of, and he's set up to probably live there a few more years before he has to take that next step. So I think a myth is just that there's only one option, and especially now with technology and different services, there's a lot of options for people.
We had my dad at home, and if I ever thought that I would know how to care for a trach and a stomach tube and quadriplegia, then, I had no idea. But we had him at home, and it was a very deliberate decision, and I would not trade it for anything. I think that one of the populations I'm most in contact with in this space are the adult children of people who are aging. And there is such overwhelming stress because you're trying to take care of your parent. The parent may resist, may think that it's not necessary. There are cognitive changes, there's decline. It just becomes very fraught. And the adult kids don't understand what they can and cannot do. Yeah. And even when the parent or the aging parent wants to have the adult kid able to do things, one of the myths that I see frequently, if something happens to me, my family can take care of it. No. That is very difficult, nor, as we say at Tupper Butler Law, we do not want to appoint someone to make decisions for you. We want to appoint someone to execute decisions you have already made. We do not ever want someone to have to decide what course of healthcare, what drastic steps. Ask me how I know. That it's punitive to have to be in the position of making those decisions. But too often, the aging parent does not take the steps to ensure that what will legally enable their adult child to do for them the way that they want their adult child to do for them. So it's not just, I want my kid to be able to manage my affairs or handle my bills, but if the legal documents are not correct, or frequently they are downloaded from the internet and not necessarily valid in Kentucky, then it's hard, because the only way to get the ability to take care of an aging parent once there's a certain amount of capacity gone is to go to court, and nobody wants to go to court.
And I love that you bring that up too, because I've had conversations with that actually with people this week that we have dad who they think needs to go to assisted living. I've not seen him in person yet, but he's being resistive, right? And I'm getting emails going, what legally can we do? And I'm like, well, he has the right to not make a good decision. So really nothing
That's
we
right.
can encourage.
That's right.
But I think we need to encourage families to be having those conversations, because I feel like they're so scared to ask, what do you want? Like you said earlier, we're not getting out of here alive. None of us are. So we might as well just recognize that and take the appropriate steps and have those conversations up front and know what mom or dad or grandma and grandpa want, because at the end of the day, somebody has to put those wants into play for them. And if you don't know what to do, you're struggling in a crisis.
It's so important. And really, I think people don't understand what happens if you don't. If you don't designate somebody and have that conversation, hopefully they'll have the conversation, but at least if they don't designate somebody, even if you have a spouse, there's things that your spouse cannot do just because they're a spouse.
Yes.
Direct your care in a mental health facility. That's one thing I've recently had.
They have
individual
to have a bank accounts.
attorney.
There are any bank accounts that are not joint. The spouse has no automatic authority to help, to deal with Social Security payments, to deal with pension payments. There's not an automatic permission granted if the legal powers are not in place.
Yeah. And so if somebody has an accident or an acute injury or a massive stroke and they haven't done that and they lose the ability to speak for themselves, and nobody can access their finances to pay for their care, nobody can make decisions for them, and they can't speak for themselves, what happens is they don't have the capacity anymore to appoint somebody, so it goes to guardianship, and that's a very difficult process and expensive and not ideal.
I have a story. So I frequently say how lucky we were that my dad woke up. So his fall in 2017, my mother died in 1983. So in re-engaging with him and trying to sort of determine what steps, he had no plan. Everything was still related to my mother in 1983 when I was 9 years old and my brother was 13. So I would tell him, I'm glad you woke up so I could, strangle you. What is this? What would have happened to me and my brother if something had happened to you while we were still kids? Well, I just didn't want to think about it. Well, of course you don't want to think about it. So, but it happens, and it became a process. And my dad and I were super close and we had serious conversations most of our lives since my mother died. And this was not one that we had approached. And I didn't know how to do it. Again, everyone looking at the lawyer in the room. He was a theologian. He thought about this stuff all the time. But we really needed to have a sit down and sort of go step by step. And we got very lucky. We had him for 3 years after he came home. He died right at the beginning of from COVID. And I frequently point to the fact the best gift he gave me was when he died, I did not have to make any decisions. I did not have to think. I just got to be his daughter. And that would not have happened if we had not had the hard conversations. My dad knew what was happening, but shielded me from much of the pressure to provide in that moment. And we were able to just be together. Had we not gone through the steps to understand clearly what he wanted, I would have been spinning my wheels and having to make decisions. I meet people who had to make decisions for their parents that still haunt them years later because they didn't know if they did the right thing. So please, parents, do not leave things to your adult children to decide for you. Even though that gives you some relief, it increases the grief and the stress that the people you care about the most are going to experience. And in a time of crisis, trust me, they just want to be your kid. They just want to be your family. Nobody wants to have to go through finding the right way to get coverage or to identify what preferences are, or even how the system works between Medicare and Medicaid and long-term care and It's just the more that you can familiarize yourself with it and be able to have those conversations with your kids or your loved ones, your spouse, your family, your nieces, nephews, that is the best gift you can give the people that you care about. That and getting rid of your stuff.
I just talked about that yesterday with all the things about having the kids don't want it. And, I think to them, it's hurtful. It's an emotional thing, but we don't want the stuff. I can say that I'm one of those kids. We don't want it. We want the memories and we want the stories and we want those special things that go along with the items. But once the family member is gone, those items really don't hold that value anymore. Really, it's all about what they meant to them and the stories and the memories, and that's what's important.
Yeah, we do see that a lot when cleaning out estates or like it's just things pile up. And a favor you can do is just to start downsizing yourself and make that apparent. I do want to touch on a little bit. We've talked a lot about families and loved ones, but there are a lot of seniors aging solo. And if you're aging solo, that doesn't mean that you can't make a plan. There are professionals that you can appoint in a fiduciary role. Our company does that for people that don't have anybody, can serve as POAs, trustees, executors. There's some local attorneys that will serve in those roles. So I just don't let that be a reason not to do the planning. And honestly, I think at the very least, please appoint a healthcare surrogate and let them know what your wishes are so that if they can help advocate for you. It's so important to have an advocate in the healthcare system. People that work in healthcare have good hearts and they try, but it's an imperfect system. And you always want to have an advocate.
We work with solo agers frequently, and it's very empowering for someone to realize that even though he or she may be alone, it's not necessarily solitude, because there are options, there are services like what Ginger provides, unmatched. There are also usually people in your life that you don't want to burden. I hear this a lot. I don't want to burden so-and-so with that, or these are my friends. I don't want to do that to them. They want you to burden them. They want you to be with them. And it is a true honor and privilege to be able to help someone through that stage of life. My dad never remarried after my mom passed away, and he was alone in his house when he had his fall, and very stubbornly stayed solo for a long time. But that connection and the ability to have people who are not necessarily related to you can also give you longevity and increase your quality of life for longer. So
if you're clear about your wishes and have that conversation, it doesn't have to be a burden.
Right. No, because you've given them a plan and they're not stressing over what is the right decision to make because you've told them what you want.
Because people who care about you, if they do not know the plan, it will be a burden.
Right.
There's just how much of a burden do you want it to be? Do you want it to be a burden that is known and shared, and at least there is some methodology to execute what you want, and we help people do that in a compassionate way? Or will people be left trying to figure out what the plan is when there isn't a plan, and have to still do something to help take care of you, and then feel bad about it? I mean, people have so much regret. And so it is never a topic that people readily run to, right? But it is truly the one that will bring a certain amount of peace to the people that you care about the most, that I guarantee you will be necessary at some point in their lives, because we are mortal beings.
Well, we do have a lot of people say, my plan is I'm just going to drop dead.
I mean, it's very funny,
That's
right?
not a plan.
No.
That's a solid plan.
I hear, well, I'm never going to a nursing home. Just unplug me.
Yeah.
Well, hate to break it to people, but when you fall and become injured, you're not necessarily on life support, but you can't go home. There's
Yeah.
nothing to unplug.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
a lot in between being healthy and being dead.
That's right.
There's
Well,
a lot of
and
different phases.
And what that comes down to is just not wanting to discuss
It does.
and realize
Sure.
that it's fear of what they don't know. So
Mhm.
if we don't acknowledge it, it doesn't exist. And I mean that's completely what it comes down to.
That's right.
And I want to thank you guys so much for coming and doing this today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for sharing your personal stories because I think people really need to hear those. And, we tell them what they should do all the time and recommend this and, we need to do that. But just hearing someone that's been through it and knowing that you made it, but it wasn't easy. But hearing it from someone who's lived through it is so important. And those are deeply personal stories that I'm grateful that you shared. And we can come back and talk about more things later on. But if someone wanted to reach you guys to get your services, tell them what the best way to get a hold of you would be.
Well, Diversified Life Care Partners, we have a website and a Facebook site. Our phone number is 812-913-4308.
Tupper Butler Law has new space that is beautiful and very accessible right at the corner of Hurstbourne and Shelbyville on the ground floor. You can reach us by phone at 502-631-1488 or visit our website, tupperbutlerlaw.com, where you can learn. We have a ton of information on there just about things people need to know. There's a fairly adorable video of my father and I before he died when we were able to move him home and sort of why we do what we do at Tupper Butler Law. There's a form you can reach out through the website to contact me and see how we can help, or you can email us at hello@tupperbutlerlaw.com.
Fantastic. Well, thank you guys so much for your time
Thank you
today.
for having us.
Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.